Okay, Smita, if you want to start.
They're all wonderful. So I picked the second verse to continue Sigalit that reminded us the first one last class, and we can endlessly read them. So verse 2, attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of a Bodhisattva. And in Hebrew, המשיכה וההצמדות לחברים ולקרובים שוטפים כמי שערה, האיבה לשונאים צורבת כאש, ובאפלת הבורות נעלם כושר ההבחנה בין מה שיש לאמץ ובין מה שיש לדחות. לנטוש את מולדתך, זהו התרגול של ילדי הבודה.
So our last session, we're on the last verse. So for the last session, the last verse, page 6, verse 37. It says, to remove the suffering of limitless beings, understand the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue from making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And so His Holiness says, we should take all the wholesome activities which we have accomplished through our sincere efforts to follow the 37 practices of a bodhisattva. And rather than dedicating these wholesome deeds to our own long life and freedom from sickness, we should dedicate them to the endless and infinite numbers of migratory beings who have fallen into suffering. In this way, we dedicate our positive merit to help others eliminate all suffering and its cause. Knowing by our wisdom the non-inherent existence of the dedicator, the act of dedication, and the recipient of dedication. From this viewpoint, it is said we should go ahead and make the dedication. So, remembering the emptiness of the three spheres, agent, action, object, we dedicate for full enlightenment. And then we reap all the benefits along the way. So if we dedicate only to today's happiness and today's clarity, then the energy and momentum finish with today's happiness and today's clarity. If we dedicate for full enlightenment, we move from happiness to happiness to happiness to full enlightenment. So that's the 37 practices. And then kind of a traditional thing that we often do once we've finished a text is to look at the outline and then start from the beginning and just do a couple verses to create the cause to meet the text again and to meet the teachings again and again. So if you want to look at the outline, so part 1, the preparation, and each one of these lines correspond with a verse. So first, the need to give meaning to this human existence of yours, so rare and difficult to obtain. Second, abandoning your native land, the source of the three poisons. Sometimes it's called abandoning your native land, which is the three poisons. Third, living in solitary places, the source of all good qualities. Fourth, giving up the concerns of this life by reflecting on impermanence. Fifth, avoiding unsuitable friends whose company creates conditions unfavorable to your progress. Sixth, relying on a spiritual teacher whose presence creates conditions favorable to your progress. 7th, going for refuge, the entrance to the Buddhist teachings. So is there anything about part 1 that you wanted to ask about or add? Those are verses 1 through 7. Part 2, the main teachings, illuminating the path. First, which is verse 8, the path for beings of lesser capacity, the small scope practice aiming for good future lives. Second, the path for beings of medium capacity, medium scope practice to end samsara. Third, the path for beings of superior capacity, great scope practice to achieve Buddhahood. And that went into the bodhicitta of intention and the bodhicitta of application, or aspiring and engaging bodhicitta. So first we had relative or conventional bodhicitta, the meditation practice of exchanging oneself for others. B, the post-meditation practice of using unfavorable circumstances on the path. So then there was this section, using on the path the 4 things that you do not want to happen: loss, suffering, disgrace, disparagement. And then using on the path 2 things that are difficult to bear: how to use on the path being wronged in return for kindness, how to use humiliation on the path. Then how to use deprivation and prosperity on the path. Then using hatred and desire on the path. And then we move to ultimate or absolute bodhicitta, which is verses 22 to 24. The meditation practice of remaining in a state free of conceptual elaborations without any clinging. The post-meditation practice of abandoning any belief in the objects of desire and aversion as truly existing. And it went into desire and aversion specifically. And so then 3, the precepts for training in those practices, training in the 6 transcendent perfections, or the 6 paramitas. We have generosity, discipline, ethics, patience, diligence, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. And because we were in part 2 of altruistic conduct, we focused in specifically on joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom, because in the previous semester you'd focus specifically on generosity, discipline, and patience. Then training in the 4 instructions taught in the sutra, to examine oneself for one's own defects and to give them up. B, to give up speaking of a bodhisattva's faults. C, to give up attachment to a sponsor's property. D, to give up harsh speech. 3, training in how to be rid of negative emotions. 4, training in accomplishing others' good with mindfulness and vigilance. 5, dedicating the merit to perfect enlightenment. Okay, so that was what we covered this semester in terms of the 37 practices. So if you go back to the very beginning, we'll just look at the verses and just think creating the cause to meet this teaching again and again from every teacher that you have connection with in every life. Just thinking this creates the cause to continuously meet these teachings. So verse 1, having gained the rare ship of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teachings arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Okay. So then specifically the last three perfections, when we looked at joyous effort, we spent a good amount of time there, and the outline was on page 18. So if you want to look at page 18 to refresh your memory. So we had what to adopt, what to abandon, and the supports for joyous effort. When you look back over that section, what do you feel like was the part that resonated? What was the part that you feel like really stuck with you and you're going to remember? Because I'm guessing, you know, it's a big list. There's a lot of elements to look at. But in terms of just finding fuel, tapping back into fuel, where did you feel the most connection in this section on joyous effort? It's not like there's any right or wrong answers.
I find the first one very good for me to think of people who I admire their courage, their way of being true to their ideals, and very inspiring for me to keep on the path and be with joy about it.
Yeah, the armor-like joyous effort. Yeah. Yeah, it helps, doesn't it, to remember I am not the first, I am not the last. This has been done, this has been achieved. There are people who are still in progress. There are people that haven't worked as much and people who have worked a lot more. You know, this is something that I can really connect with, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. What a relief. Yeah. Yeah, and whatever hardship I'm experiencing has been experienced, and antidotes to that obstacle have been revealed, and all I need to do is sit and come back to it and try again and never give up. It'll happen, yeah? Transformation will happen, more peace, more happiness will happen, more benefit to sentient beings will happen. Yeah, it's just a matter of time and practice.
Are you asking now about the joyous effort or about...
Yes, page 18.
because I was thinking about the laziness, but you're not asking about that yet.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, page 18.
Ah.
It's a separate section. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, the laziness is the most precious part. Understanding again and again how the mind works, the laziness of so many kinds, attacking the mind, although the understanding of the importance of the spiritual way, but the laziness sometimes that is so creative, looking like very important mission, but so for me that is a reminder every day. I feel that when I'm trapped into laziness, and it can be many kinds, I call myself back.
For many years, I had in my head that that old saying, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? And then I come to find that this is from the Talmud, isn't it? All these years. But this is very much related to that like laziness of despondency, where you think, oh, little old me, I'll just live a normal life and try not to cause too much trouble and help where I am. I'll be a good citizen. And you kind of like give yourself permission to be less, thinking it's humility when it's actually laziness. And so then you pull yourself out of it and think, well, if not me, then who? You know, I have all these supports and resources. If not now, then when? I'm not going to be younger tomorrow. My mind's not going to be magically sharper in 10 years. Might as well do it now. Yeah, so I give myself a little, you know, flick in the ear. Yeah. Burnout prevention and burnout recovery section of Buddhism. So even though it's intellectually pretty easy, I think that it's a really deep, important place of practice, because it's not simple to practice, even though it's simple to understand.
I think one of the main things for me that is important is what Smada said about laziness. And what goes with it is never turning back from working for the welfare of others, like the knowing that there's no turning back. It's a one-way street, this path. It doesn't mean that I don't go back, but it's a one way. You can't go back from it. Once you're on it, you're on it. And it's scary, but it's also gives me courage to go on. It's not only scary. It's scary and encouraging at the same time somehow. I can't explain it, but so never turning back.
Yep. Yeah, I find that one really important as well, because it's kind of like, I found my purpose. I've found my meaning. This is what I'm about. Thank goodness I've found what I'm about. Thank goodness it's delightful. It makes me so happy. And then there's days where it's like, but it's really hard. I'm tired. I don't want to, but it's like, well, this is what I'm doing, whether I ignore it or get distracted from it or whatever. It's like, yeah, there's no turning back. The purpose of my life is to work for the welfare of sentient beings. That's what I'm about. So if I'm doing anything else, I know that it's a distraction from the main thing. Yeah, which is liberating and confronting, both. Yeah. And then we went to concentration. And so on page 28, concentration. So on page 28, there was just a summary and then a review from previous semesters, and basically remembering that concentration is important in any kind of Buddhism and any kind of path. Without concentration, we are less powerful. Without concentration, whatever we know has less consistency. So without concentration, it's like there's nothing to move us forward with all of these amazing things that we've touched in our life, all of these ways of knowing that we've experienced through our life. We occasionally remember them. Sometimes we remember them at the right time when they're useful. And then so many lessons we have to relearn again and again, despite knowing better, because we don't have concentration. So it's like concentration is the lifeblood to everything else, because it means that you don't lose what you've learned. And so from a Bodhisattva's perspective, we're really thinking, I need concentration, sure, to get out of samsara, sure, to really pierce emptiness directly, to really cut that root of samsara. But the whole reason for doing that is so I can help get everyone out. So that means developing concentration is more important than it used to be, because before I could get by with the amount of concentration I have. I could, not cause too much trouble. I could be somewhat beneficial. My life was relatively happy, and that was okay. But now that I'm working for the welfare of all sentient beings, it's very important for me to be as focused as I possibly can be, because then my wisdom is at my fingertips, and I'm not going to lose an opportunity to be of benefit. And I'm also not going to slip into old habits that trigger suffering for myself or trigger afflictions for myself, which prevent my ability to be of benefit. Yeah, so because of bodhicitta, concentration becomes more important. Yeah, but the way to do it and the prerequisite for it are the same pervasively throughout the whole Buddhist tradition. Yeah, but the reason for it is deeper. So did you have anything about concentration or meditating in general that you wanted to come back to? Any of the objects of meditation, any of the things that happen in meditation? It's something that we've talked about a lot, but it might be that there's some questions bubbling up.
Yönten, I can ask, could you say something about concentration, which is not necessarily conceptual?
Like perceptual realization on emptiness or something, or? I'm with you. I'm willing. Ask, follow up. Give me more.
Yeah. Maybe something in the something which is more experiential, something which is not formulated and is not visualized, is not captured around an object. Something which is more abstract, kind of a memory of experience, which is not necessarily verbal or visual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for perceptual concentration, you still have an object, right? You always have an object. The mind always has an object. Your meditation always has an object. But to call it an object can sound kind of deceptive, right? Because it sounds like there's something concrete there when it doesn't have to be, especially when it becomes perceptual. So when it becomes perceptual, you're not talking about it in your head. You know, the words are gone, but the resonance with it remains, and the clarity and the holding of it remains. So the same object of conceptual meditation becomes an object of perceptual meditation through familiarity and through the energy created by merit. Yeah, so the energy created by merit and the repetition of a conceptual understanding leads to a perceptual understanding, or like expands into it or merges into it. You know, so you could, conceptually you're meditating on the breath. When you're conceptually meditating on the breath, you're actually like half a second behind the actual breath. You know, the breath comes and goes and you're trying to be with it, but you're really aware of what just happened. As that becomes closer and closer to perception, you become more and more with the present moment of the breath and merged with it. And you're no longer thinking, stay with the breath, stay with the breath. You just are in breathing. Do you know what I mean? So if it's something visual, you can have a visually generated object that becomes perceptual. It's just that you're not thinking about the details, but it started with thinking about the details. You know, you had to build it up in conception first, get used to it and hold it. When it was really familiar, it can just merge with your mind. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Do you want to ask a follow-up?
I ask whether you find it possible kind of to jump not to go through this as a process every time, but that it will be kind of available to come back every time to this state of mind of being merged, not necessarily through the process.
Yes, absolutely. But I think it's not a difference between conceptual and perceptual. It's a difference between analytical and single-pointed. That's the difference. So a single-pointed meditation is still conceptual until it's not. But it doesn't have all the working your way through the process to get there. So you could have, like a direct experience of compassion. Because you've analytically gone through compassion so many times, you can just arrive at compassion, hold your attention single-pointedly on compassion without adding lots of words or any words at all. You're just merged with compassion. When that becomes incredibly steady and incredibly familiar, it can move from conception to perception. But I think what you're describing is actually just the difference between an analytical meditation and a single-pointed meditation. And any object of analysis can wind up being an object of single-pointedness. It just needs a lot of prior work so that you do that in an accurate way.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, for sure. So they start out as two separate tools, but they wind up becoming one. Yeah, and in Tantra, they're developed simultaneously. Yeah. So, and in some other schools of Buddhism, they're developed simultaneously, unrelated to visualization, unrelated to mantra. Some other styles of Buddhism develop them simultaneously, even if in actuality, they're alternating back and forth, analysis, single pointedness, and they're alternating, and eventually merge into one. The session is built as if they're already merged. Yeah. Yeah, it takes a fair amount of just trial and error before it's even clear what to ask. You just need some solid time on the cushion, which thank goodness you guys do have solid time on the cushion now. You're starting to ask the good experiential questions. It's a good sign. Firas?
I'd like to, I don't know if it's possible to, if the opportunity to share about the in general about the practice.
About the what?
The practice.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I recently, I mean, this semester, I felt that we have been through important issues, and I started feeling the importance of the whole items and the whole things that we have been through, and I mean, but I feel, I don't know, I feel, first of all, I feel that now we won't be in relation with you or with a teacher for 4 months, and at this moment of the practice, I feel that's too long. Because though we have studied very important thing, I feel a kind of as well as I deep in my practice, the resistance arising. So I feel it even very difficult the last period to sit down and to meditate, which is a new thing.
The resistance is a new thing.
Yeah, because I used to sit 30 minutes before, sometimes 45.
Yeah.
But now recently, I don't know if this is related or not, but I'd like to share.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have been asking others concerning their practice, others in the class, if they feel that, I mean, how did they feel with the path, with the practice? And I don't know, it's becoming a bit difficult, and there is a fear that for 4 months I mean, I need a teacher in order to get close to the practice, because I feel it's difficult for me.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're not alone at all. And, it's been a weird semester. It's been weird because we haven't been able to hold each other in the same way as we do when we're sharing the physical space. At least we can be live. If it wasn't live, if everything was pre-recorded, it would be even more isolating. So at least we're live together. But I think until you're out of it, you don't realize how much the community holds you. So then if you're meditating together twice a week, then when you meditate by yourself, it's got more lifeblood, it's got more vitality to it, because you're kind of riding the wave of having been held by the community. So it makes sense that this semester would be harder because we haven't been able to hold each other in meditation in the same way. It's said in a lot of the sutras that the merit created by practicing together is hugely more for each individual in the group than it would be if they did that exact same practice on their own. So group practice has huge more energy. And so I think that it makes sense that it would be harder this semester, and also it's already hard. Now, what if we don't have live meetings? And, it's something that we all struggle with when we're in the Dharma, where you have to make sure you're planning your own inspiration. One this year, let's just get online, let's see what's the one that works. But every year I'm going to go to a big group retreat to reconnect with inspiration. And you have to kind of take the reins and make sure you make it happen. And if nothing is happening, then request, I need this. let's make it happen. So I think it's quite possible that you guys could organize something with any of us teachers, with all of us teachers, maybe on a roster. You know, I think that all of that is really possible, and it could be something with no pressure and no obligation for people to have to come if they're busy and scheduled it with other things, but something that is consistently available so that when you need it, you can tap into it. So I think talk amongst yourselves and see what do people need and what do people want, and then ask for it, make it happen. Ask, yeah. Ask for what you need because we're here. And also there's a lot of great stuff happening in Israel and good teachers coming through, and you know, kind of get linked into all of those mailing lists so that when the big lamas come through, you don't miss them, because one of them might wind up being your big T teacher, and you'll only know if you start to meet some of them and check. Yeah, so thanks for that. Yeah.
Thanks.
And also the good news is that the resistance comes when the novelty wears off, right? So the novelty of meditation has worn off, meaning it's familiar enough to actually see yourself within that space. So then you start to have resistance come up, and that's actually a good sign that you're starting to see yourself and look at yourself as an individual and assess your own individual practice and start to adjust and tweak and use the things that you've learned for yourself as an individual specifically, rather than it just being kind of general stuff that you know about Buddhism and that you know about meditation. Now you've been doing it long enough to say, oh, okay, here's the obstacle I'm having, and we talked about that. Here's the antidote. You know, so it's a good sign in a way that when there's resistance coming up, because it's showing some good self-awareness and enough familiarity. Yeah, the novelty is worn off.
I have a question concerning Eran's question, okay? The differentiation between analytical or analytic meditation and concentration, just on a single pointed, for me, it's much easier to go for the analytic one. And I suspect myself that it's the same language that I know. So it's easier for me to practice it. Or sometimes I even think it's a kind of laziness or a kind of resistance, because it's very easy for me to get into it. But if you could say something about single pointed, for example, the breathing and its relations to transformation. Like if you really succeed to empty your mind and concentrate on breathing for a long while, or normal while, I don't know, 45 minutes, for example, assuming that you succeed. So how it reflects, how it influences the transforming, beside the relaxation function of it, you know, because it's very relaxing, this I know already. But for a long while, how does it help you to transform? And I'm especially asking this, and not how it helps you, for example, to concentrate when you listen to someone, like not the practical side of it, like it helps us to listen to our patients, to immerse into them, to concentrate. Talking like between you and yourself, wise.
Well, it's a way to not lose your insights. You know, when you go through an analytical process, you have moments of deeper connection about something you've analyzed many times before, things you've thought about 100 times. Sometimes there's a new connection and there's a new awareness, and then you lose it. And you think, oh, I came to something, and now it's gone. When you develop single-pointedness, you train in resting there, and then you don't lose that. You know, so in a meditation with single-pointedness, I wouldn't meditate on single-pointedness for 45 minutes. I would meditate very, very well for 5 to 10 minutes without allowing the mind to slip into the half-focused, dull space of near sleep, which is incredibly relaxing but has no benefit in terms of your practice. It has benefit in terms of your day, but not in terms of long-term cultivation of powerful single-pointedness. So you have to, you know, it's like the brightness of your wisdom right now is dimmed by the wind of your distraction. So you have this amazing wisdom already, as well as the wisdom that you're developing. And because of lack of concentration, it's like blown about by the wind and only is steady enough to move forward with occasionally. You know, you lose what you've learned. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. You know, I'm not sure exactly what's at the depth of it. It's a tool, you know, like so many things are a tool. And if you realize emptiness intellectually, it won't go anywhere unless you can single-pointedly hold it. You know, it'll just stay as an intellectual understanding unless your mind is steady enough to stay with it, to pierce the veil of the illusory appearances of existence. So practically speaking, you know, when you're doing an analytical meditation, train in stopping and staying in single-pointedness at different parts within the analysis. And the analysis will build concentration abilities if you make sure you don't let yourself free associate. You know, if you're meditating on compassion and you think of patience, you say, I come back to patience later, right now I'm doing compassion. Because if I let myself free associate, it's nothing different than just having a think, which is useful but is not the point here, because I have a specific purpose here. Yeah. If I have a general purpose of let's just understand myself, or let's just understand the teachings and how they all connect to each other, that's excellent, and that's a great reflective process to go through, but it's not an analytical meditation. An analytical meditation has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a, you know, conclusion that you want to land on. You already know where you're going before you start, and the point is to get what you already get to sink in. Then if it does, you stay with it single-pointedly until you get distracted, and then you bring back in analysis to steady you back into the single-pointedness.
Do you mean that, for example, Tonglen is a single-pointed?
No, I'm saying that it starts analytically, and then sometimes you get it, you get the point, then you stay there single-pointedly for a minute, 2 minutes, and then inevitably you will get distracted. And that's your invitation to bring back in the specific analysis and visualization to stay you centered with the whole premise. So within an analytical meditation, there are periods of pause where you stay with it single-pointedly before moving into more conceptualization, verbalization, narration, however you want to call it. You know, so within an analytical meditation, there are points of pause when you've connected, when you've gotten it. And if you haven't gotten it, that's okay. You just continue with the analysis and it's still a useful process. But to invite some single-pointedness into your analytical meditation session, it makes it more powerful. So the breath is useful, but I mean, really, in our tradition, we mostly use the breath as a preliminary to let surface distractions settle. Yeah, and then once surface distractions have settled, you can decide to keep using the breath as your object of single-pointedness, or you can use something like an image of the Buddha or the concept of compassion, but without words around it. Just what you already know to be true of it, a sinking in and a resonance with it. You just merge with compassion and stay there. You don't have to talk about it to yourself. You know, so use breath if you love the breath, by all means, but it's not the only object of single-pointedness. Anything you use for analysis can wind up also being an object for single-pointedness. You know, the thing that's going to give us depth is discipline. Yeah, if you start out, I'm going to do this meditation, and then halfway through change gears, or halfway through start thinking of someone else, something else, some other process, you know, it has some effect, but it's watered down. You know, with discipline, then it pierces and penetrates fairly deeply and can set up a new house there. And then it's a house you can keep returning to very quickly, rather than having to rebuild it from scratch every time. Yeah. So far we've been doing, you know, getting to know the whole path to enlightenment. Once you kind of have a very clear overview of the whole path, then you start doing meditations that hold the whole path, which is, you know, Tantra, but also, you know, Lamrim meditations, Lamrim prayers. It's like these things have power and meaning, but only if you've studied about them and kind of meditated specifically on each part. Then when you do it in one session, just, 1 minute for that topic, 1 minute for that topic, and you gradually go through a sequence, then it has this vividness every step. So that's what we're working our way to, is to touch every step with enough clarity that then when we do a meditation that has all the steps, they each have vividness and meaning to them. So then you could do a meditation on the 37 practices and just pause for, 20 seconds with each one, and the meaning of it flares to life, and you hold your attention on the meaning. And then you move to the next one, think about it, remember what it means, touch your experience of it, stay there. And then you move down to the next, to the next, to the next. You could do a whole retreat like that. But only because you've studied it first, only because you've touched each one first. I don't know, am I missing your question?
No, I'm just, no, I thought about it a little bit differently. I understand now that what you say, concentration can be on a single point that is not just in one image, a static image or the breathing or something like this, but you can pick up a point, for assuming Tonglen. So I'm not sure I understand what you mean catch the thing of it, because it's not the visualization. You're not talking about this, you're talking about the essence of it, no? And concentrate on this. But it is still a thought. So I'm not sure, but maybe it's a question of practicing a lot, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess if you make it into your daily life, there's days when the person in front of you, you love them, but you're not kind of filled up and radiating your love for them. And then there's sometimes when, the connection and the conversation kind of awakens your love for them, and you are like imbued with or merged with your lovingness, and it doesn't have words with it, but it's an experience, and we still call it a conception, even though it doesn't have words, And so if that happens in meditation, where you're thinking in words, the faults of self-cherishing are, the benefits of cherishing others are, and you're walking yourself through words, then you touch the reason why I suffer is because I have self-cherishing. That is why I suffer, and you finally get it for 2 seconds. Then you stop using words, you stay with the getting it. Stay with getting it. And then you'll forget and get distracted, and then you reinforce with analysis again until you get it again. Stay there. So within an analysis, you're kind of talking and then settling, and then talking and then settling, And if the conclusion to a patience meditation is anger is never justified, knowing that is not enough for you to believe it. Knowing that that's where your patience meditation is going is not enough for you to believe it, unless you already intellectually believe it because of your logical processes that have come before. So you walk yourself through them, and then you land, oh, right, really, not just in general, but really anger is never justified. Actually, I get that in my bones, in the marrow of my bones, I get it. I stay there. It's like that. So it's still conception. Conception is incredibly powerful. Conception is vital and necessary. So don't think just because it took words to walk you into that place that it's less significant. That's vital. You need a huge amount of accurate conception to merge into perception. And prior to that is just merging into single pointedness, which is incredibly profound and really necessary.
Is there time to talk a bit about the retreat, or it's not for this class, or?
No, I mean, in general, it'll all become clear once the retreat starts, but we're doing karma from a bodhicitta perspective. We're using Wheel of Sharp Weapons. Read ahead if you like. You all have the book. Yeah. So karma from a bodhisattva's perspective, as opposed to karma from a foundational vehicle perspective. The main text will be Wheel of Sharp Weapons. If you're, just dying from curiosity, there's a Wheel of Sharp Weapons playlist on my YouTube channel. You can, look at it. Yeah, but basically karma.
I'm disturbed for many samsaric, very not a very spiritual way things, but I'm trying to set a motivation for the retreat, and I find it a bit difficult.
Retreat logistics is like a separate conversation another time. So it's not like we've forgotten that there are a lot of issues there. We'll come back to it, but not now because this is our last session.
If we can talk about the medicine of joyous effort or concentrations, or how can we take this to, I didn't want to talk about logistics, but how to use what we were studying this semester in cultivating the motivation to the retreat.
Well, I mean, think about how hard it's been to practice without each other. Now you finally get to be together. Yay! Done. Okay, tick. Finally, we get to be together. Things will be easier. Yeah, or we'll get to do more meditation and less talking. Yes, and I think you all enjoy it so much more when I talk slower. So if nothing else, look forward to me talking slower. That's exciting, right? So.
I buy it so quickly. You have to work in commercials.
Right.
Bodhicitta, brought to you by the Wisdom Realizing Emptiness. Okay, so yeah, anyway, retreat is where we integrate, isn't it? If we never do retreat, then all this stuff we learn just kind of is like overwhelming, you know, and there's like no way to digest it. With retreat, we finally get to digest some of it and pull it through into our life more viscerally than when it's just an intellectual understanding. Of course, there's amazing wisdom that comes from just hearing. There's a wisdom of hearing and there's a wisdom of contemplation. But the wisdom that arises from meditation, you know, is more stable and sticks with you. And so thank goodness for retreat. You know it's going to be hard. You know that there are going to be challenges. And those are the very things that are going to make you stronger. And the very things you need to cope with the world that is going crazy right now. You know, we need inner strength, inner resilience to not suffer in the face of all the craziness and to actually be of benefit to this crazy world. We need inner stability. So retreat is where we're kind of shoring up our skill set and deepening it. I think that progress is light years faster when you're spending a whole day with something. I think we already know this. If you spend 1 hour with a topic and then you go on to another topic and then you go to work and then you have to feed the kids and then you have to do this, you touch something in class that was meaningful and good, but you know, it's so much more powerful if you touch a topic, then you talk about it, then you reflect on it, and then you meditate on it, and it's the whole day of it, then it actually has time to stick. So retreat, you know, I can't talk enough about the benefits of retreat. It's really vital for our work, for sure. And it's a rare opportunity. And but thank goodness, because we get to do one of the coolest texts ever. This is one of my favoriteest texts in the whole world. I know I say that about all of the texts, but this is really true. Wheel of Sharp Weapons is so cool, you guys. It's really cool. Yeah, it's my favorite today anyway.
Okay. Specific pages, or just start reading it and...
Yeah, just start reading it. If you'd rather, you can watch the YouTubes. You know, I taught it to Shantideva's study group over 2 days. A commentary in the back by Geshe Nawang Darge, so a lot of the confusing words are explained in the back. But I mean, honestly, if you want to just come fresh, that's fine too. Don't overwhelm yourself with needing to prepare. It's just karma and bodhicitta. We've talked about karma and bodhicitta. Now we're just going deeper with it. So yeah, slowly, slowly. All right, so page 49, wisdom. And so the pith here, or the main point here, is just here in italics that says, without method, the other 5 perfections do not enable us to achieve fully accomplished Buddhahood. Therefore, to practice prajna with method, rejecting the pseudo-reality of the triad, the independent, permanent, self-existent, of the actor, the act, and the acted upon, is necessary. Without prajna, or wisdom, the practice of the other 5 perfections is like blindness. With prajna, like sight. Therefore, it becomes the true cause of Buddhahood. To attain this, we must have the union of prajna and method. What is the nature of prajna? Seeing the triad, This is the practice of the Bodhisattva, right? The triad being the three spheres: agent, action, object. Yeah. So it's basically saying without wisdom, the other 5 perfections will have limited effect. They'll prevent negative states of mind as long as you remember them. And as soon as you forget, your negative states of mind will pop right back up. As soon as you lose focus, you'll suffer again. So if you want to stop just doing symptoms relief, if you want to cure, you need wisdom. Okay. Yep. So yeah, anyway, wisdom is a huge topic, but did you want to ask anything about wisdom? Okay, so I had a grand plan, which is not going to come to fruition, but the grand plan was to do a brief review of all of your semesters so far, which obviously in 5 minutes is doomed to failure. But anyway, we'll just do a really quick overview because I want, in a way, for you to remember where you've been and also where you're going and how much incredible energy and effort you've put into your own inner process and how much work you've put into benefiting sentient beings. So whether you remember all the details of the semesters or not, you have planted seeds that are vital for your progress, and it's really worth celebrating. So we'll just have a little look here. So you started with Introduction to Buddhism, and you were with SK, and you did the history of Buddhism, the essence of Buddhism, the overview of Buddhist psychology, and then you started to look at meditation. So you spent a great deal of time on some context, different ways of Buddhist thought, and we're learning the basics of meditation. And then you went into the second semester, which was looking at the conventional nature of the mind and the ultimate nature of the mind and the 7 types of awareness. And that was a harder semester because we were still thinking that we're going to use the master's program and basic program materials, not realizing that you guys are way busier and have a lot more happening than most basic program students. So you were looking at that text from Purbachok, and then SK adjusted and recalibrated and taught the mind in a more accessible way to you guys. And we learned a lot about how to structure the program. And then we did year 2, the mind in terms of constructive and destructive states. And that was when you met me, and I did main minds and mental factors. And we went through the 51 mental factors and the 6 main minds. And we used the traditional text from Khenchen Yeshi Geltsen, and we just went through it in a quite traditional way. And that's what we got up to in year 2, semester A. And then came Andy and Sean, and they were teaching you about Buddha nature. And basically the premise was the mind is the creator of our world. The mind is creator of happiness and suffering. The mind is the motivator of actions. So that's where you had that. And then year 3, Understanding Reality Part 1, was developing a focused, tireless, blissful mind, cultivating penetrating wisdom and perceiving reality. And then you had part 2 with SK, and you were learning a bit about tenets going into that section. So you had it for a whole year, and so it was like an emptiness extravaganza, as well as learning a lot about how to develop renunciation. And then year 4, we were doing like the 12 links and concentration in depth and stuff like that, right? 4 immeasurable thoughts took prominence. I'm trying to remember. Then children came, and you guys did a lot on bodhicitta, 7-fold cause and effect, equalizing and exchanging. So you had a whole bodhicitta extravaganza there. And then SK introduced the first 3 perfections. She was going to do joyous effort, but she decided to do 3, and then I would do 3. So we split it in half. And then here we are now. And then next is going to be Venerable Amy. And she's going to talk more specifically about relying on a spiritual teacher and transformative techniques. You touched in on those a bit with Andy and Sean when you did The Mind is the Creator of Everything and Buddha Nature. So you kind of started that conversation, and she's going to continue that conversation. Venerable Amy's got a few things online if you're curious about her. She's really clear. She's really smart. She's lovely. I think you'll enjoy her a lot. And then we'll have the Wise and Compassionate Analyst Part 1, which will basically be Lamrim Chenmo, and then Part 1, and then Venerable SK will do Lamrim Chenmo Part 2. But this is kind of your nutshell, what you've been getting up to. And it's a huge piece of work and really worth celebrating. So if you want me to send you, the curriculum again, I'm sure you have it somewhere in some file on your computer. But well done, team. You're heading towards the end, and we'll just take a minute and dedicate. So think that all of the merit of this particular semester goes towards these aims. And if you feel comfortable, you can recite with me Shantideva's dedication. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thanks guys. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Yönten.
Thanks guys.
Thank you so much, Yönten.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye. Having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teachings arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When you keep their company, your three poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers, even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence, what worldly god can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. The subduer said that all unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, pleasures of the three worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to the never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When your mothers, who you've loved since time without beginning, are suffering, what is the use of your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. All suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone, out of strong desire, steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, out of compassion, take all her misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, in return, with a loving mind, speak of his good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though someone may deride and speak bad words about you in a public gathering, looking on her as a spiritual teacher, bow to her with respect. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if a person for whom you've cared like your only child regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially like a mother does her child who is stricken by illness. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place her as you would your spiritual teacher, with respect on the crown of your head. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, afflicted by dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement, take on the misdeeds and the pain of all living beings. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you've become famous and many bow to you, and you gain riches equal to Vashavarana's, See that worldly fortune is without essence, and be unconceited. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. While the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real, and give up attachment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. All forms of suffering are like a child's death in a dream. Holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. Therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there is no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being, so wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your ethical discipline. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. To Bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, toward all cultivate fortitude, without hostility. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Seeing even here and solitary realizers, who accomplish only their own good, strive as if to put out a fire on their head. For the sake of all beings make enthusiastic effort, the source of all good qualities. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding. Cultivate concentration, which surpasses the four formless absorptions. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Since the five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. If through the influence of disturbing emotions, you point out the faults of another Bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel, and hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration in a bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words, which are unpleasant to others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Habitual disturbing emotions are hard to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once as soon as they arise. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue from making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Translated and edited by Ruth Sonam, 1997, Snowline Publications, Ithaca, New York.